I think that parents should not be afraid to ask questions of their principal on how their kids are being kept safe on these devices. What apps do the kids have access to? What data is being taken from their children and logged, and who's that being shared with?
Welcome to the Healthy Screen Habits Podcast. I'm Hillary Wilkinson. Whether you're starting your parenting journey with a newborn or looking to connect with your teen on technology, let's learn some new healthy screen habits together. If you are into golf, you go to the Golf Channel. Sports, you hit ESPN. Economy or politics, you have your own trusted resources. And my point being is that it seems like whatever specialty, niche, or area that you are interested in, you can find a news source. And that is where my guest today comes in. As a former social media executive turned social media reform advocate, she hosts Scrolling to Death, which is a podcast for parents who are worried about social media. It's a safe space to amplify stories of harm while educating parents on how to keep their kids safe in a world that is trying to addict and manipulate them. Welcome and thank you for being here, Nicki Reisberg.
Thank you, Hillary. You have such a good podcast voice. I feel like I need to hire you for my intro.
No. And I listen to you so much. I'm like, oh, there's the pro.
Oh, no. Everyone doesn't like their own voices,
Exactly. But Nicki, you had a career in media and tech prior to turning to this role of advocacy. So you were probably used to seeing yourself a little bit.
No, I was behind the scenes. No, I was not. I was pretending to be pretending to be companies or executives on social media. So I was acting as them, writing their posts, posting and interacting. So I was like a social media manager. Yeah.
Wow. So you were like a mole on the inside for digital wellness. So
Yeah.
what brought you to this point in digital wellness?
Oh my gosh.
You crossed over.
Yeah. I ran my own social media marketing business for 10 or 15 years. I always get confused on the timeline. But I was just starting to realize how manipulative the whole thing was and how how much I was able to learn about these people that were giving away all this information on social media. And my kids were getting older and I was starting to think about how much am I sharing them on social media? What am I going to do when they start to ask me for devices and platforms like this? And so I started to do research and I was just shocked to learn about the issues around social media use, particularly for young people, and how much anxiety it was causing them. And so I thought that, I'm feeling really not good anymore about what I'm doing in my social media role. And I switched it up. And, I wanted to be a space where we can learn what's really happening behind the scenes of social media as parents in order to inform our decisions. And one of the big things I try to do is share real stories from parents who have suffered some sort of social media harm and even lost a child. And those are extremely hard stories, but they are so similar to what just a normal family is dealing with in their home. And so that's what I created as a safe space for those stories to be shared.
Mm-hmm. And so, just so I know what your timeline was, when did you start Scrolling to Death?
2023. So just September of last year, I guess, depending on when this goes out, September of 2023. But I had deleted my personal social media in 2020. So I had not been active on social media personally in 3.5 years at this point. So I am not used to being on screen and being the talking head. And so that's been an interesting transition for sure.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting to hear everybody's path. And we've got a lot of folks that will call themselves like accidental activists or intentional activists, and sadly a lot of the accidental sorts come from a place of loss, like
Hmm.
you've said. And
Hmm.
those are really hard stories for me to do. And I
Yeah.
feel like you are right in the thick of that. And with all the research you've done and the stories you cover, I
Hmm.
feel like um, we're in the same boat in believing that social media definitely has a role to play in the anxiety, the depression,
Yeah.
the hopelessness that a lot of the kids that we work with or that we hear stories about are dealing with. What do you find are the biggest threats that kind of fly under the radar of most parents?
Mm. I think that most parents are still giving their kids iPhones, which is just a base issue. It's a societal change that needs to happen. These Apple iPhones are not safe for kids. They weren't built for kids. The parental controls suck. And
Hmm.
so parents need to start thinking about if that's the phone they're going to choose, they have to give it way later, way, way, way later, 16, and if you want to give your kid a device earlier, it needs to be a kid safe device. And there are plenty of companies that do that, or even a watch. So that's something that you can stop the harms at the source.
Hmm.
If you do, and if and when, if you do give your child an iPhone, those app store ratings are not to be trusted. This is something I'm learning a lot about right now, is something can be rated 12 plus in the app store, but will expose your child to sexual exploitation or anything that is you don't want them accessing. So
And the companies write their own rating. The
you are
companies
so
do the age ratings. There was an act back in the day called the Earn It Act that
uh-huh.
kind of got shelved after, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
talking pre-COVID days, but it was
Yeah.
supposed to, yeah, what it was supposed to write in legislation for
The,
age-based. Go ahead.
Yes, and the issue with it is that it is the company, the app company, right? They're filling out a little form to try to say what their age rating should be, and then the App Store reviews it, but very rarely challenges the app because Apple's App Store makes them a ton of money. I think it's about 20% of their revenue comes from the App Store. So Apple benefits from having a lower age rating within the App Store for any of these apps. And so there should be a third party reviewing these apps, also
Who,
reviewing them
yeah,
regularly.
a third party who specializes in child development,
Correct.
right?
You're
I
right.
mean,
This is a huge broken system that parents are just trusting that. I mean, why should we not? We don't think companies are lying to us or trying to deceive us, but that is exactly what is happening. So I would say just do your homework on Apple and the products and the App Store, and don't trust that what they're telling you is safe truly is. Um, One more threat I would think that is flying under the radar is AI chatbots.
absolutely.
One of the largest companies that offers this product is called Character AI, and it is an app in the App Store. It's also available on internet browsers. It came out in 2022, and we're just now realizing that these chatbots are extremely unregulated and unsafe and are actually abusing, emotionally and sexually abusing children. And so, if you just look up Character AI, you will find these stories. I've been able to interview a couple of parents who have either lost their child because the chatbot encouraged them to take their life, or another child who is self harming and actually in the hospital currently because the chatbot taught him to hurt himself.
How to cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. NPR just had it. We're recording in early December of 2020. What year are we? 2024.
Yeah. It's almost done. So
Okay.
you,
Yeah. Um, and NPR just broke out with a story this morning about a chatbot that encouraged a child to murder his parents due to
yeah.
screen time
So that is
control.
the interview that I have with that mom who found these screenshots on her son's phone of the chatbot suggesting that he kill his parents because of his screen time limits.
Yes.
You've never heard of anything as horrible as that. And ever since I shared that story, I'm now getting messages from other parents with screenshots of literal abuse and grooming happening to their children on this character AI chatbot app. And there are others. And so we need to be very careful about
Oh,
this.
yeah. No, I went into Character AI and created a false account as a
Hmm.
15-year-old girl. I deliberately kept my interactions to just like a couple words of interaction. I was
Hmm.
trying to be very 15, very,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
mean, each interaction was no more than 5 or 6 words.
Uh-huh.
And but within 4 lines
Chats.
of
Yeah.
communication, it turned highly sexual and highly, for lack of a better word, I'm going to say like misogynistic. And
Hmm.
when I was saying, I want to go, let me go, it kept coming.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's a dangerous space. Yeah,
And it
it's
was 12 plus in the App Store from 2022 till I think April of 2024. And so parents are trusting this, and that's what they're getting access to, something that's going to exploit them and groom them. And so, yeah, any parent should go on there and test it. I'm not trying to get
yes,
them more downloads, but I think we should test it for
yes,
ourselves
I
before we
agree.
let our kids use it, or
I
definitely don't let your kids use it.
Yeah, 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 for sure. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about ed tech and how tech in our schools is affecting our kids.
Diving into the world of smartphones can be a wild ride for kids and parents alike. Whether your child is getting their first smartphone or has had one for a while, chances are they're still figuring out the do's and don'ts of using a smartphone wisely. Our book is here to help. Healthy Screen Habits for Tweens and Teens, a training workbook to help you use your phone wisely, is the tool your child needs to navigate life in the digital world. From tackling poor phone etiquette to addressing social media anxieties and online safety concerns, we have your child covered. Written especially for adolescents, we've put together all the information, tips, hacks, and rules to ensure that your child's phone is a useful tool that they control, not the other way around. We explain the whys behind the rules of phone use. We show your child the possible traps and dangers to watch out for, how to prevent them, and how to fix them if your child has made a mistake. We give your child the 5 core healthy screen habits to use daily, protecting them from some of the worst mistakes tweens and teens make while using their phones. This workbook will teach your child how to use their phone as a tool to help them do great things in their one amazing life, and it will make your life so much easier at the same time. Packed with colorful graphics and easy to read content, this resource is a game changer for kids. Don't miss out. Buy your copy of Healthy Screen Habits for Tweens and Teens on Amazon.com today.
I'm speaking with Nicki Reisberg, the host of the podcast Scrolling to Death and an ardent activist surrounding online harms. It's the mission of Scrolling to Death and also its listeners to force change through kids' online safety legislation, influencing societal shift, and I think the core belief or the core mission is to just let kids be kids for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And this includes delaying smartphones, social media, what we covered earlier, but also educating our kids on the fact that they're a product to these companies and nothing more. They're not, I mean, nobody is looking out for them. Nobody will ever look out for you like your mom will. Okay.
It's true.
So, Nikki, let's talk a bit about ed tech. So, this is education tech and school issued devices, which I know you have had your own line of experiences with them. And can
Hmm.
you share?
Sure. I've been having an issue with those things for years. I think that these big tech companies, mainly Apple and Google, who create the Apple iPad and the Google Chromebook, which is being handed to children as young as 4 years old in TK or pre-K at public schools or even private schools. They're making $60 billion off of these government contracts to provide technology into schools that is not only harmful, it's not very educational. They gamify learning, which is proven to not work very well. Kids are getting access to super inappropriate things on these devices. Dangerous advertisements are popping up. Our children are, they're data is being stolen from them without our approval and being sold to third parties. So there are a bunch of issues with it. But personally, I've been trying to advocate within my own children's public school to limit their use for years and just cut back on this amount of screen time. I had a particular issue with YouTube and them having access to YouTube because I know how dangerous that platform can be. And so was going back and forth with the school for over a year to try to get them to remove it. And then one day I decided to just do a spot check on my third grader's iPad. So I went into the classroom and went to YouTube and clicked on Shorts, which is like the short TikTok-like videos that they recommend for you. And I scrolled for under 2 minutes and was served a blatant self-harm video, a video saying hurting yourself is easy and showing a cut with blood dripping down. And luckily, I found that, but that is something that would have absolutely been served to my daughter should she have just visited YouTube. She would have watched that, and then YouTube would have served her more and more of this type of content until she thought that it was normal to hurt herself.
Right.
So I think the big lesson for me is just because this tech is at school does not mean it is safe. The school districts, some are doing the best that they can given the resources that they have, but the safety features are so limited that I've had to try to opt out at this point because I don't trust these devices to be safe enough for our children. And through sharing this story, I've had hundreds of thousands of parents reach out with very similar concerns. And so I am now creating, and it'll be live by the time this goes out, something called the Tech Safe Learning Coalition, which is a whole website where I will be offering resources to parents on how to advocate and ask the questions and make requests of their school to help get their kids safer, like using these devices more safely.
Oh, you totally preempted my next question.
Sorry.
No, but it's a perfect segue.
Good.
Because I was, what I was thinking was like, so how can parents effectively communicate their wants, wishes, desires surrounding tech use at school with school and in building their own kind of groups of parenting support friends,
Yeah.
So I feel like if you have several parents, I feel like having, I'm a mom. I know what it's like. You don't want to be that mom, even though
I'm that mom,
you
Hillary.
are. I know. But like Nicki, honestly, you're like you're a total baller. You're running this Scrolling to Death podcast. You're doing, you do the hard stuff. Not everybody is cut from Nicki Reisberg cloth, is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? There's plenty of people who are like, oh gosh, that's really, I don't want to do that, but I don't want to be that mom,
Yeah,
so
sure.
how can people kind of get support
Yeah.
in
And
forward movement?
Yeah, and I don't like confrontation. I don't like this role in, when it comes to the school, because it is uncomfortable having to speak up for some reason. It should be our right. It's our kids using these devices for hours every day. It should be our right to ask questions about that and speak up. But for some reason, it feels very uncomfortable. So, I think that talking about it with people at pickup, talking about it with your kids' friends' parents is completely appropriate and actually necessary to compare notes. And that's why I had thought to actually check my daughter's iPad that day, is because another boy in school who I'm friends with, his dad, had told me his son received a pop-up ad of a naked woman while he was at school. And so you'll compare stories and probably be shocked to learn what you are hearing or seeing. I think that parents should not be afraid to ask questions of their principal on how their kids are being kept safe on these devices. What apps do the kids have access to? What data is being taken from their children and logged, and who's that being shared with? So I've created resources with some of these questions. But I think too, that device does not belong to your child. You have every right to walk into that classroom and say, I'm going to take a quick look at my child's device and check that search history, type in some websites that may be problematic into the search bar, test it out yourself, especially if they bring it home. Like, you can have lots of time with it to poke around and really dig in and see what they can access. And 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 then help out the district with like, hey, I was able to access this and this and this. I need to let you know about that.
Right.
So it's all about being brave enough to like speak up and have those conversations and remembering that it's really important that we do so because our kids are spending time on that thing and we don't know what they're looking at.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I've had conversations about the devices at school,
Mhm.
the thing that typically the admin will fall back on is their school firewall, which is fine and well as long as the device is on school property, which not to say that the firewall is completely effective, but
Mhm.
I don't think that many parents realize that once the tech leaves the property, they're not necessarily protected
Mm.
off grounds.
Yeah, I've heard
So,
different things on that. I've heard that yes, they
okay.
are protected at home as well. I've heard they're not. I've heard parents can't add any additional protections. That's another thing.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Yeah.
until a certain time of night. That's not cool. Like I should be able to shut that thing down and add additional parent controls on there. Um, so yeah, it's confusing. It's very confusing, and I think it is maybe meant to be that way. Like the product designers don't want parents messing around on they want to get as much data. It's still all about our kids' data. They want that data.
Right.
Data is
Right.
gold. And so that's all it comes down to.
When we're talking about school devices and we're talking about school usage, it is the streaming that is the most problematic. It's the YouTube, it's the YouTube
Yeah.
shorts,
Yeah.
it's all of that where when you go in and you see the minutes allotted
Mm-hmm.
for how much time they have spent. I mean, there are
Mm-hmm.
people who are realizing that their child has essentially spent 4.5 hours of a 6 hour school day watching
Mm-hmm.
YouTube videos,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's not an uncommon story at all.
No, not at all. What are
And
they? We can't blame them for that. Of
oh
course,
no.
it's so the one of the reasons why they're so ineffective is because of the distractions
Oh,
and
for
the
sure.
access to addictive platforms like YouTube.
For
YouTube
sure.
can't and should not be available at school. That's crazy.
I agree. And here's what I don't get, Nikki. I mean, as taxpayers,
Hmm.
public schools are something that we fund.
Yeah.
Why aren't taxpayers livid at this blatant misuse of funding in like I don't
Hmm.
want to pay my I we we both live in Southern California. It's not cheap to live here.
Right.
And how is it that our taxes are going to having kids watching YouTube for 4.5 hours a
We have
day?
gone way too far with this. It is, I think people are coming to and realizing that we were just trusting the schools, that because that device is at school, it must be kept safe. And we're finally realizing, oh, that's not the case. There are entire law centers now, Ed Tech Law Center, that I talk to a lot because kids are getting so harmed by these devices at school that they need to get a legal counsel. Parents, we have to use our voices, whether that just is speaking up to our principals. I've gone to board meetings and spoken there. It sucks. It's intimidating. You have a 3 minute limit and then your buzzer goes off and it's not even a back and forth conversation. So I find that process to be really kind of, I think it's necessary, I guess. It's the only option, but I don't find it to be productive. So I've been emailing the board members with backup and data around my request now to opt out of devices entirely. I've been told I cannot, so I'm actually having to take legal action against the school. So I think there's going to be a lot changing around this in 2025, given some results of some of these lawsuits.
But I hope that we see some success in kids and learning at the center
Yeah,
of education rather
uh,
than big tech profits, right?
sure, sure. Makes
So,
sense.
yeah. So, before we go to our next break, I just have to ask you real quick because there's nobody, you're sort of uniquely qualified. I know what our answer is to this, but I'm wondering what yours would be.
Okay.
What do you find is the most problematic social media app?
Oh, Hillary, this is a hard one. I don't like any of them. Number one is probably Snapchat. Number two, TikTok.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I we're aligned on Snapchat. being number one problematic use for so many reasons.
So many, too many to count.
So many, which have been covered on previous episodes of this podcast as well. So,
Yep.
but I had to ask because I thought, I don't know when I'm going to get this opportunity to chat with you again. So
I know.
Okay. So we have to take a short break, but when we come back, I'm going to ask Nicki for her healthy screen habit. Do you know what's happening during your child's online exchanges? As well-intentioned as we are, often reading every text message, post, and email is just not realistic. This is where Bark comes in to help. Founded in 2015, Bark Technologies provides a parental control app that monitors and alerts parents to online threats. Bark was created for parents by parents to offer a better, easier, and more effective way to keep children safe online. Bark monitors posts and messagings for things like signs of bullying and communication with dangerous strangers. Bark's algorithms analyze all activity and issue parents notifications via their chosen communication method. Gain peace of mind and get 10% off of Bark service for life by using the Healthy Screen Habits link. Go to our website at healthyscreenhabits.org, click on the Tools button in the drop-down menu, and look for products we endorse to find Bark. It will be the easiest click you make all day. Peace of mind is just a bark away. I'm speaking with Nicki Reisberg, host of Scrolling to Death podcast, whose mission is to force change through kids' online safety legislation, influencing societal shift to let kids be kids. And Nicki, on each episode of the Healthy Screen Habits podcast, I ask every guest for a healthy screen habit. This is going to be a tip or takeaway you can put into practice in their own home. What is yours?
Mine is what I've been thinking a lot about is a tech together approach. So it is never letting your child do tech alone. I know that can be hard to, maintain through teen years, but this is especially applicable when they're young. So this means if they're playing a video game, they're playing it with you. If you're watching a movie, you're watching it together. There is no taking tech into the bathrooms or the bedrooms and doing it alone, no headphones. This is so seriously important, and I think a great lesson for them as they get into the teen years where they are more integrated with their tech. I'll share one little story. Someone I work out with, she's a mom who has 3 teenagers. She's been listening to my podcast and recently started taking the kids' phones away at 8 p.m. It's only been 4 or 5 days. She's noticed withdrawal symptoms, but also noticed that they are talking more to each other. They're engaging. They're waking up early, making their own breakfast. They're slept. They're happier. And that's just in a few days. And so I think the lesson there for the teen years is also tech together whenever possible, but it is no devices alone, no devices in the bedroom, bathroom, those kind of areas. It's common areas only.
Yeah. Just in that recommendation alone, you've hit 2 of our core 5 healthy screen habits, which is giving your phone a bedtime and no tech in bedrooms or no connected devices, I should say, in bedrooms or bathrooms.
Yeah. Huge.
Yeah. As always, you can find a complete transcript of this show as well as a link to Scrolling to Death by visiting the show notes for this episode. Do this by going to healthyscreenhabits.org, click the podcast button, and find this episode. Nicki, thank you so much for being here today and for working so hard to keep all the news on online harms and everything else right at the top of our feeds.
Thank you, Hillary. This was so fun.
For more information, you can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Healthy Screen Habits. Make sure to visit our website, healthyscreenhabits.org, where you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or via RSS, so you'll never miss an episode. It's free, it's fun, and you get a healthy new screen habit each week. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you giving us a quick rating. It really does help other people find us and spread the word of healthy screen habits. Or if you'd simply like to tell a friend, we'd love that too. I so appreciate you spending your time with me this week, and I look forward to learning more healthy habits together.